Now let's talk about the latest out of the Big Ten. Don't have to talk about the Big Ten a whole lot today. We did a full reaction video. Colin got it edited and put on the YouTube channel in like 37 seconds the other morning. Yesterday morning, I guess it was. It was a long Wednesday, wasn't it? So we're going to dive into all of it. The Big Ten, they're good to go. Kevin probably had the quote of the year on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel so far. I told him I was going to use it. I have attributed properly. Kevin said, and I quote, "This feels a lot like when my daughter makes a mess and then wants a reward for cleaning up the mess." Yeah, that pretty much summarizes what just happened in the Big Ten, but I am a man of my word. To Kevin Warren and all the chancellors and presidents up there, I'm a man of my word. Told you guys, hey, get things straightened out. I don't care how big a mess you made. That's really on you, okay? That's a reflection on your reputation and maybe a stain on your brand. Just give us football. So looks like we're going to get football. Now, the immediate takeaway, and again, we did a full reaction video on this if you have missed it, so it's on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. I am ecstatic that the decision was made, and I've expressed that and will continue to express that. I didn't want to automatically shift into negative Nancy mode, but we're not out of the woods on this. And I think anyone who read through the protocol realizes, especially if you're a coach or a player in the Big Ten, you realize now sort of the secondary and maybe more primary challenge begins. And the hurdle that's got to be cleared is a little bit higher maybe than the one that you just cleared to maybe get the season off the ground. 8 games in 8 weeks, 21-day mandatory quarantine. If you test positive, if more than 5% of your roster in any one-day period test positive, you are out 7 days. You cease all operations for 7 days. Point is, there's no wiggle room here. The point is, they made such a mess of things on the front end that now they don't have any bye weeks built in. Now they don't have any reservoir weeks in between the last week of the regular season and the conference championship game like the SEC was able to build in. They just got to get it done. And these are very, very tough hurdles to clear. It's a very fine needle that you have to thread. But we do at least know where we stand in the Big Ten. Now we await a schedule release. How about that? The fabled second schedule release. Anybody can do one schedule release. We're doing 2 of them in the Big Ten. I can tell you, our web department doesn't care. They'll take all the traffic they can get. That was not shocking, but I'll tell you what is shocking. 7 a.m. yesterday morning, John Wilner does a great job covering the Pac-12. Best by 10 miles covering the Pac-12. He works obviously out on the West Coast, and so you got to wait a little bit later in the mid-morning to early afternoon to get news from him because he's asleep when the rest of us are in our morning meetings. But he put out on Twitter yesterday kind of a synopsis of the day that was in the Pac-12. And he said, 7 a.m., we woke up on the West Coast and it seemed like there was no hope. No one was even talking about playing football in October or maybe even the fall period in the Pac-12. And by 7 p.m., everything had changed. How did that happen? Well, the first whiff you got was when the Big Ten made their announcement, and then you started to hear whispers from the West Coast. And then those whispers became louder. And as I've said before, you learn who to tune out and you learn who to tune into. And the folks that you usually tune into were saying, hey, heads up, got some things moving out here. Don't know what it's going to end up being, but we got some things moving. And then Gavin Newsom, unfamiliar name until recently in football circles, the governor of California, just kind of out of the blue says, there's nothing that we've put in our guidelines that's keeping the Pac-12 from playing. And everyone did a collective gasp because he said, well, that's been kind of misrepresented in the media. And trust me, the folks out there took notice. And Larry Scott and company, the commissioner of the Pac-12, they got their you-know-what in gear. And they said, hold up, whoa. And then there were subsequently a lot of really good guys reporting on this and girls reporting on this that quoted sources both on the record and anonymous to say, yeah, technically the guidelines say we can play. The problem is we can't practice. The guidelines say we can't practice. And then there was an anonymous source quoted as saying, well, you could have 5-on-5 practice. You could take mental reps. You could do visual training. Obviously someone who's buckled a chin strap a time or two in their life there. Sarcasm intended. So anyway, you go throughout the day, and then you get news. It feels like a week's passed. In reality, it's been a couple of hours. Then you get news, and the Oregon governor's talking, the California governor's talking. You get news that they're willing to bend. They're willing to rapidly revisit those protocols. And so by the time 7 p.m. rolls around, as Wilner so accurately put it, felt like the world had been turned upside down there. And so we've got a lot of rebuttals, and we've got a lot of revisiting. And where are we? So with that in mind, John Wilner and Bruce Feldman, I thought 2 guys that did phenomenal reporting today on this. Wilner released a report a few hours ago. The details are this. Where do we stand tonight? It is currently September 17th, 7:08 p.m. Central Standard Time. Where do we stand? Pac-12 is looking to target a Halloween restart. Happy birthday, Nick Saban, by the way. October 31st. They want to play, according to John Wilner, an 8-game season. Now, what do they need? Well, a few things. They need approval from the presidents. They need some local restrictions eased. They seem semi-confident they can get this done. It doesn't seem like, in other words, there are 15 parties pulling in 15 different directions like it felt like at times with the Big Ten. Feels like a lot of people behind the scenes and have back-channeled this thing, and feels like they're willing to move in the same direction. The LA schools, it looks like will be good to go. The restrictions that were in place in LA County look to be able to be lifted or at least modified. So USC, UCLA could be good to go. It's the Bay Area schools, Cal and Stanford. It's still a little ways to go there. So that's probably the biggest hurdle to clear. Got to get the restrictions taken care of. Then they need a consensus, according to John Wilner, on how camp would work. When would the schedule begin? How would it line up? And will you have synchronicity between everyone's camp schedule? You got to have that. After all that, you got to get the approval of the presidents, or as they call them in the Pac-12, CEOs. So that is operationally how things would play out. Bruce Feldman with The Athletic reached out to some head coaches today. I'm laughing. It's serious, but my goodness. When you grant someone a little bit of anonymity, boy, are they willing to go off. And Bruce Feldman had a couple of, 3 maybe, Pac-12 head coaches that in no uncertain terms, in fact, terms we could never use on the show right now, they said, we are not going to be physically ready to play by October 31st. Now, keep in mind, he didn't get every coach out there on the record, anonymously or otherwise. So it stands to reason there is a gulf. There is like a Grand Canyon's difference, to use a Western geographical analogy. There is a Grand Canyon's difference between the attitude that some of the head coaches have out there, and it's for obvious reasons. Some of them have been able to work out. Some of them have had access to their facility. You got other ones like UCLA, for example. To this moment, they haven't been able to get in their building. There was another one out there. I can't remember which one it was. They're allowed to go into their facilities to use the bathroom, but they can't shower. All kinds of just crazy, asinine regulations put in place, and it's not the job of the football coach or the athletic director to put those in place, and they can't lift them either. Their local officials can. That's what they're working on right now. But, you know, Bruce Feldman had a number of coaches telling him, our guys have done combine work. That doesn't get you ready for a football season. That gets you ready for the combine. Some of them talked about doing kettlebell workouts in the parking lot. And so the fear amongst some out in the Pac-12 is, it's great if you could put a stamp of approval on a plan. How in the world are we going to be physically ready to play football? If COVID doesn't get us, we're going to have hamstring injuries all over the place. So there was a lot of optimism in the Big Ten because a lot of places in the Big Ten never stopped preparing. Ohio State never even so much as tapped their brakes. Like, they're ready. They're ready to play. Michigan, Wisconsin, like, they're fairly ready to play. Some of these folks out there like Stanford, their players have gone home. Not only have they not been working out, and you don't know what in the world condition your players are going to come back in, they got to do a 5-day mandatory quarantine when they come back. So, lot bigger mess that you have to solve. And I'll be honest with you, like, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic. It was tough to envision maybe the Big Ten getting things started. But the thing about the Big Ten was all the hurdles, all the roadblocks that were in place in the Big Ten, they put in their own way. So it was within their power to remove them, and they did eventually. In Greg Sankey's words earlier today, appearing on the SEC Network, they made a decision that confirmed our decision all along. Greg Sankey, man, he's handled things very well recently, to say the least. And so in the Pac-12, the point is the hurdles that are in place have not been put in place by any kind of university president or athletic director, chancellor, or anything like that. So they think they can do it. We'll see.